Eggs. Few foods have been as misunderstood and unfairly villainized over the past several decades as the humble egg. For a long time, nutrition guidelines warned people away from them, citing concerns about dietary cholesterol and cardiovascular risk. But the science shifted, and what emerged from years of follow-up research was a much more favorable picture. Whole eggs are now recognized as one of the most nutrient-complete foods available, containing high-quality protein, healthy fats, vitamins B12 and D-choline, and a range of essential minerals. The protein and fat combination works together to keep hunger quiet for hours after eating. Studies consistently show that people who eat eggs at breakfast consume meaningfully fewer calories throughout the rest of the day compared to those who start with carbohydrate-heavy meals like cereal or toast. The mechanism involves satiety hormones, particularly peptide Y and cholecystokinin, which are released in greater amounts following a protein-rich meal. Ghrelin, the hormone most associated with hunger signals, is also suppressed more effectively after eating eggs than after most other breakfast options, because eggs are naturally low in calories while being so dense in nutrients. They give the body a great deal without demanding much in return. Oats. There is a reason oats have served as a dietary staple across dozens of cultures and centuries of human history. Originally cultivated in Europe and parts of Asia, they became especially widespread in colder climates where other grains struggled to grow, and their reputation as a sustaining, long-lasting source of energy followed them across the world. That reputation is earned. Oats contain a specific type of soluble fiber called beta-glucan, which behaves in a distinctive way once it enters the digestive system. When beta-glucan comes into contact with water in the stomach and intestines, it forms a thick, viscous gel that slows the movement of food through the digestive tract. That slowing effect means the stomach stays fuller for longer, and the gradual release of energy prevents the kind of sharp blood sugar spike that leads to an equally sharp crash a couple of hours later. It is that crash, more than almost anything else, that drives mid-morning snacking and excess calorie consumption. Steel-cut and rolled oats carry the highest concentration of beta-glucan and deliver the most benefit, while heavily processed instant varieties tend to lose much of that structural fiber during manufacturing. Salmon. Wild salmon occupies a fascinating place in the nutritional landscape because it delivers meaningful weight management benefits through several completely different pathways at once. The most well-known of these involves omega-3 fatty acids, particularly EPA and DHA, which are found in concentrated amounts in fatty fish like salmon. These compounds reduce systemic inflammation throughout the body, and that matters more than many people realize. Chronic low-grade inflammation is increasingly understood as a significant factor in metabolic dysfunction, and research has linked it directly to difficulty losing weight even in caloric deficits. Salmon is also an exceptional source of complete protein, and protein carries a higher thermic effect than either carbohydrates or fat. That means the body expends more energy simply digesting and processing a protein-rich meal, which adds up over time. Beyond protein and omega-3 salmon is one of the few natural food sources of iodine in substantial amounts. Iodine is essential for proper thyroid function, and the thyroid is the gland responsible for regulating metabolic rate. Even a mild subclinical iodine deficiency can quietly slow metabolism in ways that make sustained fat loss noticeably harder. Leafy greens. Spinach, kale, Swiss chard, romaine, arugula, and their many relatives share a quality. That is almost paradoxical in how useful it turns out to be for weight management. They add enormous volume to a meal while contributing almost nothing in the way of calories. A generous bowl of spinach might carry fewer than 30 calories, yet it occupies real physical space in the stomach and sends genuine fullness signals to the brain. That volume effect alone makes leafy greens one of the most practical tools available for managing hunger without restriction. But the benefit goes deeper than simple volume. These vegetables contain compounds called thylakoids, structures found within plant cells that have been shown in clinical research to slow the digestion of fat and stimulate the release of satiety hormones, including glucagon-like peptide 1. They are also rich in magnesium, folate, iron, and vitamin K, nutrients that support metabolic processes at the cellular level. Their high water content contributes to hydration, which itself plays a role in appetite regulation. When the body is adequately hydrated, hunger and thirst signals are less likely to be confused. which reduces unnecessary calorie consumption throughout the day. Legumes. Beans, lentils, chickpeas, and split peas have sustained human populations on nearly every continent for thousands of years. And the reason for their endurance becomes clear the moment you look at their nutritional composition. They contain a combination that is genuinely rare in the plant kingdom. Substantial amounts of both protein and dietary fiber within the same food. Most high-protein plant foods are relatively low in fiber, and most high-fiber foods are low in protein. Legumes provide both simultaneously, which means they engage two separate and complementary appetite-suppressing mechanisms at the same time. The protein slows gastric emptying and triggers hormonal satiety responses, while the fiber adds bulk, feeds beneficial gut bacteria, and keeps digestion moving at a steady pace. Studies comparing diets that include legumes multiple times per week with those that exclude them consistently find lower average body weight, smaller waist circumference, and better blood sugar control among the legume-consuming groups. Their glycemic index is also notably low, meaning they do not cause the rapid swings in blood sugar that drive cravings and energy fluctuations throughout the day. Avocados. Most fruits derive the bulk of their calories from simple sugars, which makes them a somewhat complicated food in the context of blood sugar management and weight control. Avocados are built differently. The vast majority of their caloric content comes from fat rather than carbohydrate. And the dominant fat is oleic acid, the same monounsaturated fatty acid that gives olive oil much of its health reputation. Oleic acid has been shown in research to reduce appetite signaling in the brain and lower levels of inflammatory markers throughout the body. But what makes avocados particularly useful as part of a weight management approach is how they interact with the other foods consumed alongside them. The fats in avocados slow the absorption of nutrients from the broader meal, which moderates the blood sugar response and extends the period of satiety well beyond what most foods can deliver on their own. They are also unusually high in potassium, a mineral that helps regulate fluid balance in the body and reduces the bloating and water retention that can obscure fat loss progress. Regular avocado consumption has been associated in multiple large studies with lower body weight and reduced waist circumference, even after researchers control for total calorie intake. Greek yogurt. The production process that distinguishes Greek yogurt from conventional yogurt involves straining out much of the liquid whey, and that single step changes the nutritional character of the product quite dramatically. What gets removed along with the whey is a significant portion of the sugars and carbohydrates that regular yogurt contains. And what remains is a food that is substantially higher in protein, thicker in texture, and more slowly digested. That protein density is the most immediate reason Greek yogurt supports weight management. It is filling in a way that low-protein foods simply cannot replicate. And the slower digestion rate means the feeling of fullness extends well past the meal itself. Greek yogurt also contains live bacterial cultures, the probiotics that populate and maintain a healthy gut microbiome. Research into the relationship between gut bacteria and weight regulation has expanded rapidly in recent years. And the evidence increasingly suggests that microbiome composition influences how efficiently the body extracts and stores energy from food. Beyond that, the calcium in Greek yogurt appears to play a direct role in fat metabolism, with some studies suggesting it helps regulate the processes by which fat cells store and release energy. Cruciferous vegetables. Broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, bok choy, and kohlrabi all belong to the same botanical family, and they share a set of properties that make them particularly valuable during periods of intentional weight loss. The most straightforward of those properties is the ratio of volume to calories. These are dense, fibrous vegetables that take time to chew, occupy significant space in the digestive system, and carry relatively few calories per serving. That combination makes it genuinely difficult to overeat them in a way that disrupts a caloric deficit. But their contribution goes beyond simple calorie arithmetic. Cruciferous vegetables contain a class of compounds called glucosinolates, which break down during digestion into biologically active substances that support liver function. The liver is the body's primary site of fat metabolism, and keeping it functioning efficiently is directly relevant to how well the body processes and eliminates stored fat. These vegetables are also high in vitamin C and folate, and their significant water content adds to both hydration and the physical sensation of fullness that helps regulate appetite across a full day of eating. Chili peppers. The compound responsible for the heat in chili peppers is called capsaicin, and its effects on human metabolism have been studied with genuine scientific rigor for several decades. Capsaicin binds to receptors in the body known as TRPV1 channels, which are part of the nervous system's response to heat and pain. When capsaicin activates these receptors, it triggers a process called thermogenesis, in which the body generates heat by increasing its calorie burning rate. The magnitude of this effect is modest when considered in isolation, but it is measurable, repeatable across studies, and cumulative over time with consistent consumption. Capsaicin also interacts with appetite regulation in a separate and complementary way. Research has shown that it reduces cravings specifically for fatty and salty foods, the categories most commonly associated with overeating and diet failure. It appears to do this through its influence on the autonomic nervous system and certain appetite-regulating hormones. Fresh chili peppers, dried varieties, cayenne powder, and chili-based condiments all deliver capsaicin in varying concentrations. Even mild peppers consumed in moderate quantities provide some degree of this benefit. Making the compound accessible to people who do not enjoy intense heat, nuts, almonds, walnuts, cashews, pistachios, and pecans are calorie-dense foods by any standard measure, and that density has long made people cautious about including them when trying to lose weight. The instinct seems logical on the surface, but when researchers follow people over time and compare nut consumers with those who avoid them, the results reliably point in the opposite direction from what that caution would predict. Regular nut eaters tend to have lower body weight and smaller waist measurements than people who avoid nuts, even when total daily calorie intake is factored into the analysis. Several mechanisms explain this. The combination of protein, fiber, and fat in nuts is deeply satiating, which means consuming a small portion meaningfully reduces appetite and overall calorie intake across the rest of the day. Additionally, not all of the calories listed on a nutrition label for nuts are actually absorbed during digestion. The tough cellular structure of nut tissue resists full breakdown in the gut, so a measurable fraction of the fat content passes through without being metabolized. Nuts also supply magnesium, vitamin E, and plant-based compounds that support hormonal balance, reduce inflammation, and contribute to the kind of stable metabolic environment that makes sustained fat loss more achievable. Apple cider vinegar? Fermented foods have been part of human diets since well before recorded history, and apple cider vinegar is among the oldest and most widely used of them. Its modern reputation is somewhat cluttered by exaggerated health claims and wellness marketing. But stripped of the noise, there is a legitimate and reasonably well-supported body of research behind its specific effects on blood sugar regulation and appetite. The key active compound is acetic acid, which forms during the fermentation process when bacteria convert the alcohol in apple cider into acid. Acetic acid slows gastric emptying, meaning food leaves the stomach and enters the small intestine more gradually after a meal that includes vinegar. That slower transit moderates the rate at which glucose enters the bloodstream, producing a flatter, more controlled blood sugar curve. The significance of that moderation cannot be overstated in the context of appetite management. A smaller blood sugar spike after eating leads to a proportionally smaller drop afterward. And it is that drop that reliably triggers hunger, cravings, and the impulse to eat again sooner than necessary. Several controlled studies have found that consuming a small amount of diluted apple cider vinegar before meals reduces subsequent calorie intake at those meals, likely through this gastric emptying mechanism combined with modest effects on satiety hormone signaling.